Hey y'all, welcome to Come Home with Jennah. I'm Jennah Sears, your favorite North Texas realtor. We are back for part 2 of my conversation with Paula Hester. She is a doctor. If you haven't listened to part 1 of this interview, please go back. We are discussing the current antitrust lawsuit. So let's jump right into it, Miss Paula. Tell me, what did I ask before?
The details of Sitzer Burnett.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paula, can you give us the highlights of this most current case?
Yeah, so Sitzer Burnett is our case that just went to trial. We got a jury verdict on Halloween Day.
Of course.
Ironically. It's a class action lawsuit of 5,000 home sellers that filed suit against the National Association of Realtors as well as 4 other broker defendants. We had 2 settle prior to trial, which would left our remaining 2 with NAR for a total of 3 defendants. And move forward. The plaintiff's main claim in this case is that the MLS system, by way of this cooperation and the way the commissions are paid from listing agent to buyer's agent, prevents true and fair negotiation on behalf of the buyers and the sellers and true free competition, which would drive down the cost of real estate agent commissions. It's a topic that it has a little bit of a sore spot to it because homes have become so unaffordable. Yes. We all talk about our 20-year-olds being able to buy a home today. That was less of an issue when the rates were really low.
Correct.
Now rates are higher. And it's really tough if you've got, like I do, I have a 28-year-old and this 26-year-old, they're not able to buy a home. That's not really, it's very expensive. That's not really in their playbook right now. And so the topic is a little timely. Obviously, this case started 4.5 years ago, but it is timely with the market that we're in now. And the plaintiffs are seeking to find a way to make sure those commissions are negotiable and in turn probably reduce the cost of buying a home.
Gotcha. So in this case, it finally came to trial.
It did.
And what were people expecting versus what happened?
Well, I don't know what everyone really expected. I don't think I was too surprised by the jury verdict, or at least the jury verdict in favor of the plaintiffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount was pretty shocking, for sure. They definitely got a little bit of a message from the jury. They only deliberated 2.5 hours.
So fast.
It's fast. About an hour in, they asked for an exhibit to review the damages model. So we kind of knew, how it was going to go down. The plaintiffs walked into the courtroom, I've read, pretty happy. Defendants not so happy because everybody sort of knew. I think it was a really tough deal because it's not an issue where everyone's out there, let's pay our realtors more. Right. There is a stigma to being a real estate agent that you are very wealthy, that you drive really expensive cars, that you make a lot of money, and I think that that's part of salespeople too. In general,
I agree. Across the board.
You're
in sales. You're in sales.
If you're in sales, you're in sales, and inherently people don't like feeling like they've been taken advantage of. That is why people don't love going to buy a car.
Right.
They feel dumb. They feel like they don't know the lingo. They feel like people are talking about them behind their back. They feel vulnerable. Their credit report's open. Their income is open. You feel being judged. It's a big purchase. You're kind of scared. You get some buyer's remorse. I mean, how many times have you bought a car and in the 5 seconds that you're walking away with it with the keys, you're just like, okay, wait a minute. Did I pay too much? Did I make a mistake? Can I afford this? So I think all of those feelings are probably feelings that home buyers can relate to, and they've always felt about buying a home. And buying a home is a lot more complicated than buying a car. There's a lot of terms people don't understand. The process is very scary. It's very vulnerable. And so I think overall it was an emotional response to the evidence by the jury. The plaintiff certainly put on an emotional case. The defense, I felt like, put on a very logical case. Mm-hmm. And I've been a lawyer 25 years. I've never found that logic and reasoning wins out against emotion. I've tried my whole life to convince people who are emotional that they shouldn't be with my logic and reasoning. It never works. If you're married, you've probably been in that same spot too. It doesn't really go in your favor. So I think that's ultimately part of the problem too. I think that we can come up with a rule. I think my biggest regret, and I thought this in the classes that we did, you were on our panel, I thought this about a lot of our panels, if the jury could have heard our realtor partners and they could have heard our panels and how much they care, I wonder if it would have turned out the same way, or at least, the verdict wouldn't have been as high maybe. And I think if I could give any opinion to potential home buyers, home sellers, it's after 22 years in the title business, most agents are wonderful people, and
we want to help.
You do want to help.
That's why
you do. And
yes, I have to feed my family, but also I want to make a process seamless for a buyer and a seller. And ultimately, my goal individually is that everyone gets a fair deal and is fairly represented. That is my wish.
Absolutely. And of course, there's always going to be those bad actors. I don't care what industry you're talking about. You're always going to find 10% that aren't the greatest and that we're not super proud of. That's no different here. But by and large, a lot of closings. I supervise a lot of closings in the last 22 years. I need to add it up. I'm very curious about how many closings I've actually supervised over 22 years. But it's a lot. It's definitely in the hundreds of thousands. And by far, like I said, by far, the agents are really, really advocating very well for their buyers and sellers. But if you became an agent 5 years ago, MLS was there. You joined MLS. You did what everybody else did. There's no conspiracy. Nobody got together and sat down and said, let's all do this. So I think that's a little dramatic for what's happened. But I do think there's a pretty good solution, and that's just pulling those commissions out of MLS.
Yes.
And I don't know. It seems pretty simple to me.
Yes.
Nobody's asked me. But
Nobody's asking me either.
Nobody's asking me. But I think it seems pretty simple, and I'm sure there are quirks about it in different states, but it would work with lending. It would work with a lot of different things to do it like we do commercial.
Right. And that just makes a lot of sense to me. And I think everybody is concerned because there have been some large publications that have written some pretty powerfully opinionated articles, not necessarily directed at the case and maybe what the DOJ is trying to do within the industry, but more at realtors, really. Yeah. And I
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was trying not to cough. No. My eyes were starting to water, so I was like,
yeah.
Okay, so sorry. I was trying not to cough during her sentence, so she didn't have to recreate where she was.
And we're not live, so
no. Yeah, but I didn't want you to have to start over again with your sentence. But so sorry. My eyes were like, okay, I'm not.
Do you need water?
No, I'm good.
Are you sure?
It was just a tickle.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I think that has been a lot of the news around this case. And when my clients have been asking me, I have not had one client fully understand until they've talked to me that this is an antitrust case.
Yes.
And that, I think, is difficult just being in the industry right now, because I don't think realtors are being roasted for who they are, what they do, or their job. But it feels like that a little bit.
It does feel like that.
But I think that's not the point of the case. But, of course, there's going to be, everyone has a side. Could you walk us through, in this case, because there's another one coming.
There is.
Tell us a little bit about how many brokerages were brought in to this first case, and what about following suit? Because this is really industry-wide when you have NAR involved. And the implications are crazy to me.
They are. And, there were the four defendants besides NAR in the Sitzer-Burnett case. There were pretty much the same in the Mueller case that goes to trial at the beginning of 2024. The Gibson case, I think this case was filed about 8 minutes or 10 minutes after the verdict was read in Sitzer-Burnett by the same plaintiff's attorneys. When you find a formula, I guess you stick with it. So can't really blame him for that. But in any event, and it included a lot of all the defendants that weren't in the first case that you would know, household names that you would probably know for the most part. Big brokerages that everyone's going to have heard of. We've had a couple of other copycat cases, one in New York, one in South Carolina. Some of the same actors are in those. We had a case filed in Texas this week against.
Yes, I really want to get into that too.
Yes, against some new defendants. Our board of realtors have been named as defendants, as well as the Texas Association of Realtors, which is a little different. It wasn't NAR, it was TAR this time. And
wait, can you pause?
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between the two and how they're linked?
So there's about 600, I believe, MLSs across the country. Most of them are kind of fall underneath the National Association of Realtors, and the hierarchy goes up through your local Realtors Association. It's just a trade association, Texas Association of Realtors, and then NAR. Not all MLSs have to belong to NAR, but most do. Some are broker owned, but most work like that. And so that being said, that seems a little like a conspiracy, but we all have trade associations who put out ethical guidelines and training, and in TAR and NAR, they provide forms and they provide additional
lots of promulgated forms from TAR.
Lots of forms.
I use them all the time.
Yes, lots of forms and lots of educational opportunities and designations. So a lot of wonderful things about the association.
Education.
It is, and absolutely. Yeah. Legal representation, legal hotlines that you can call to get answers. Yeah, so really provide a great service for our realtors and for our community. And so this time in the suit for Texas, they did not include NAR. They just hit TAR. They also hit a little closer to home. They hit some of the big brokerages, but they also hit some smaller ones.
Yes.
And that's a little scary.
Yes.
That's a little scary because I don't know how the smaller brokerages.
How do you afford it?
How do you afford cost of defense? Because, y'all, defense,
oh my gosh,
not cheap. Well, it's not cheap.
Just to level set so everyone kind of understands how a brokerage works. So in the state of Texas, and every state has different real estate law and different governing bodies around it. So in the state of Texas, because that is the only state I am licensed in right now, you have to, I totally lost my train of thought.
You have to have a designated broker.
In the state of Texas, you have to have a designated broker. So at this point, I am a sales agent. I have not taken my broker's exam yet. That is coming up, y'all. Get ready. But I effectively do not hold your contract with me because it's not really with me as the sales agent. It is with my broker. So if you have a big brokerage like a Remax or a Coldwell Banker, anything like that, you are going to have a bigger body because it is countrywide essentially. But you can also say, if I get my broker's license, then I could just be my own brokerage and I'm just Jennah, but I have the same training and licensing as a bigger brokerage would have, but I sure as heck don't have the pockets. So in a typical larger brokerage situation, you are going to either pay a split or you are going to have a fee. So with Remax, I pay a monthly fee to be an agent there. And when I was at my previous brokerage, I paid a percentage of each deal to that brokerage. And that is essentially how it works. But the bigger the brokerage, the deeper the pockets, because the more agents they have working under them.
That is true. However, you're talking about you need some pretty deep pockets here,
and there's no way because that's not how. No one's making money being a huge brokerage.
Nobody's making. You're just not. You're not that kind of money.
You're really not.
Not that kind of money, and that's not to say they're not feeding their families. But when you're talking about a litigation attorney to defend you in this, it's hundreds of dollars an hour.
Yes.
We're not talking about going down and just grabbing.
I'll show my age.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We're not going to find the guy on the back of the phone book, which will show my age. That you're just going to be able to call him up and have him defend you. I mean, you're going to have to hire a law firm that's well versed in federal antitrust law. There aren't that many of them out there. They're not on every street corner, and they're very expensive. So it's really, really cost prohibitive. These lawsuits will be very, very cost prohibitive for all of the brokerages, no matter how large they are, but especially going to be hard for the smaller ones. And I'm really interested in that and sad about that. I'm sad about all of this.
Me
because
too. That's the antithesis, I believe. You can. How are you going to make sure there is no monopoly when you're smushing the little guy?
Yes.
And that's, I don't know if that's an opinion, but that's how I feel.
Yes. Well, I don't think the goal is to break this.
Yeah.
The goal is not to break our real estate system.
Yes.
But we're a huge part of the economy. We can't do that.
That's part of the fallout, I believe, of all of this.
Now, you can make some argument that we could have fixed it. We could have settled a few years back. And I think there's a decent argument for that.
But to be fair, we thought this was over in the last administration.
We did, because we didn't think the lawsuits were over. They were still pending, but we did see a settlement with the DOJ back in, I think it was 21, and thought it was completely over, and maybe we checked all the boxes. And again, I just want to reiterate, the Jennahs of the world didn't go out and meet with the other Jennahs of the world in some back alley.
There's no conspiracy.
Yeah, there's not the way that people would think of. Now, do we have a system that has enabled commissions to stay at a 5 to 6% rate on average in the U.S.? We do.
Sure.
There's that. So that is definitely a plaintiff's argument. But it's not in what people would think of when they're thinking of conspiracy. Again, I think conspiracy is just such a law and order type word. It's not that exciting. Correct. It really isn't. It's a field in MLS that the plaintiffs want pulled out. That's what it is. And so it's not as interesting as our flashy publications would like it to sound. It is interesting, but it's not that interesting.
It's not quite as dramatic.
It's not as dramatic.
There's not a real bad guy, I think.
Yeah. There's some stuff.
There's no one person you could point at and say, this happened.
There's some egos.
Sure. Oh,
there's
always.
Yes.
Because you're in sales.
You are in sales. There's some egos. There's some folks that had a microphone and a spotlight and were a little ego driven. There's some audio recordings that have come out here lately that aren't pleasant to listen to.
But that is on brand. I mean, you kind of are who you are in the arena that you're working in your family arena, with your friends, in a social group. And just like every person has their own opinion and has their own behavior mode, that doesn't go away when we become in a professional setting. And you can't judge one person you can't judge an entire industry by one person.
That's correct. And unfortunately, people have that sort of inherent bias about groups of people, whether that's real estate agents, car salesmen, salespeople in general, lawyers.
Yes.
We're not a very loved group either, right? We're not a sympathetic defendant.
We're in the same club.
We are in the same club as everyone that I've taught this class to has pointed out to me that I'm in the same club. Totally agree with that. Big, large corporations in that same club. I've worked for Fidelity National Title for 22 years. I think that we are a great company and we always strive to do the right thing. But you get this sort of, kind of narrative that big corporations are bad and they don't care about their employees and they're this or they're that. And I'm thinking, I've never, ever seen our company do anything like that. And I've seen the times when we didn't have to necessarily do the right thing or what was required by law was X. And we went well above that because we are a big company and we have shareholders to answer to and take care of. And we care. Like, we just are a great company.
You want to do the right thing.
Absolutely. So, a big corporation is only big because it's made up of a bunch of people. A lot of people who care about their job. And the same thing with realtors. Now, I just feel like this is an easy fix. I've said that a lot. I think that we pull it out of MLS. Now, I don't know about the money, right?
Sure.
Obviously, we got some money issues.
It's a different conversation.
It's a different conversation. But at the end of the day, all that consumers really need to know about this is that commissions are negotiable.
Yes.
How much you pay in commissions are negotiable.
And they always have been,
and they always have been.
That is how we are taught.
They always have been. But if you don't ask and you just rock along and you don't advocate for yourself and if you don't negotiate, you're not getting a lower commission split. Just like if I don't negotiate the price of the car when I walk in, I'm going to get
the sticker price.
The sticker price.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's a conspiracy, but we do have an MLS system that we probably do need to fix, and that'll be interesting, and I think that will be great for consumers if that happens. I don't think 1 million copycat lawsuits are great for us. I don't think it's great for our economy. I don't think it's great for our industry, and I don't think ultimately it will be great for consumers.
So are there any other suits that have been filed similarly as the one that's happening in Texas in other states?
We've got one in South Carolina, one in New York. Now, interesting, the New York Board of Realtors announced a couple of weeks ago that they were removing commissions from MLS effective, I think it's January 1. I think they set a beginning of the year date. And so they just went ahead and jumped out there. And I don't believe they're not NAR members, but they just went ahead and said, hey, we're taking them out of MLS completely.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me to see the other boards start to do that. And then we just need the forms to catch up.
Just seems like an easy fix.
Just seems like an easy fix to me. But we've kind of let the train go a little bit. And when a train starts going down the track,
it's getting faster.
It gets faster and faster, and the narrative just becomes what it becomes, and it takes a life of its own. And like I said, it's not that dramatic.
Right.
It's interesting, but it's not that dramatic.
And it's like, you don't think about your realtor until you need one. You don't think about a divorce attorney until you need one. You don't think about a heart surgeon until you need one. So I think that this is just kind of bringing up a lot of ideas. And on average, the average person buys and sells 5 homes in their lifetime. So this is an issue that matters to me because this is what I do every single day.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that it would be on the radar of the general public without that narrative that we've been hearing.
Probably not. And what we fear is that buyers will choose to go without buyer's agents. And that
terrifies me.
That is a terrible thing. And I'm not a realtor, I'm a title company.
Right.
It terrifies us as a title company because there is so much to learn about buying and selling a home. Most people only do it 5 times a year, and there's pretty big gaps between those times. They forget. Forms change, procedures change. We've had a lot of big changes in the last several years. It is not good for anyone for there not to be buyer's agents. Oh my goodness. It terrifies us on the title side that
my fear
dealing with that
is that if you cannot afford to be represented, that you will go without representation. And I think that is terrifying for a first-time home buyer, for any home buyer.
For any home buyer.
Because you really want an equitable deal. And both sides, I just feel so strongly that both sides need to be represented. It is not my business to talk about how we're getting paid or if there was conspiracy or anything like that. But at the heart of my business, I really believe that both sides have to be represented in order for a deal to function smoothly and for the industry to stay alive. And I mean, housing in America this is the American dream.
And it's complicated.
Yeah, it's
and it's
so
not
complicated.
easy. We have lots of disclosures, lots of documents, and we spend a lot of time explaining those documents to people. And even then, people are excited, they're stressed,
and
it's a big purchase, they're moving. Maybe they're leaving the home that they lived in for the last 30 years, raised their kids in, and they're sad. Maybe it's a divorce and they're stressed. And sometimes we have to say things multiple times for them to even hear them or understand them.
Even in a good, happy situation.
Absolutely.
I'm saying things multiple times.
Absolutely.
Just because there's so much information.
Absolutely.
That I want my clients to understand. I take it very seriously when I put a document in front of someone and they're signing. And this is most likely the largest purchase of their life.
That's right.
And it scares me that somebody could go into that and feel like that they couldn't be represented because they don't think they can afford it.
Absolutely. Negotiate your commissions.
Sure.
As a consumer, negotiate whatever you buy if there's an opportunity for that, but don't operate on yourself.
Yes.
Nobody needs to be, amputating their own leg
exactly.
here. The average person doesn't know enough about real estate to go unrepresented, unless maybe they're a lawyer or they're retired.
In which case, they probably already are representing themselves or...
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I represent attorneys all the time.
Absolutely.
And they know what they're doing, but I play in these forms all the time, and this is my ball of wax over here. So if you're an expert in one field, you want to bring in an expert in the field that you're about to jump into.
Sure. We'll pay twice the amount of food to have it delivered to our door so we don't have to get in our car and go down to McDonald's for dinner. Yeah, we should not, buyer's agent commission or a representation is not where we should, skip out on that. We need that representation. Right. But yeah, totally negotiable. It should be considered to be, it is negotiable. It is negotiable. But you got to negotiate it. You got to do that. With anything that you buy, like I said, with the car as well, you've got to negotiate that.
Absolutely. So hold on one second. How long, do we have one more? I think we have one more in us.
You want to do one more?
I'm
completely down for that.
I do. I think so.
Tell you this is perfect to wrap up.
Okay.
This one, and then if you guys want to go for a third, you're more than welcome.
I just kind of want to talk about the implications of the following cases, and then how the states how does states' rights kind of play into this, and individual state organizations under or with NAR is kind of where I'm going.
Keep in mind antitrust law is federal, so the states don't come into it. State law doesn't come into it. But
they're encouraged, from my understanding, and please correct me because I'm way out of my, I know what I do. I'm a depth. But we have to follow whatever that is. Whatever happens federally, each state is required.
It will trump any state law. So Texas couldn't come in and make a law that says all compensation should be in MLS.
Yeah, because that's kind of where that's
federal
what
law.
I want.
Yeah,
that's a really good thing to do.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that is a great stop for us right now. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Paula.
Absolutely.
I so
Thank
appreciate it. And y'all stay tuned. We are going to come back with our part 3, and we are going to wrap up this awesome conversation. So this is Jennah Sears, your favorite North Texas realtor. Thank you so much for coming home with Jennah. I'll see you soon. Bye.